All right, so the other day when I went and got those turbine wheels, the Vector wheels, I asked the guy if he had anything else, and he had like some 20-inch tires, like some brand new ones. And I was like, no, like old stuff, like, and it kind of showed, like, pointed to the rims I just bought, and I was like, no, old like muscle car stuff. And he's like, oh, I got a muscle engine. I'm like, okay, what is it? And it was buried under a bunch of stuff. And he pulled it back just enough where I could kind of see some of it, and just saw that it was a small block Chevy. I could see the intake and the distributor. That's about it. Like that drool Riley has going. So anyway, he didn't have a price on it. Wasn't sure if he was going to sell it. So I just told him, let me know if you're going to sell it. And didn't hear from him for a couple of days. I messaged him. I was like, hey, did you come up with a price on that motor? And he went back and forth with me. And he's like, what do you think it's worth? And I'm like, well, I don't know if it's any good. It's got no carburetor on it. For all I know, it could be full of water and totally junk. And then he said he'd send me some more pictures in the morning. So he sent me some pictures this morning. And it's got aluminum heads on it, aluminum intake, HEI distributor, and it's on a whole engine run stand. Like, it's got a GM aluminum standard transmission bell housing on it, and some sort of radiator hanging on it, and stuff like that. But again, I don't know. If this thing filled up with water, I mean, it could cost more. If those heads are full of water, I mean, it could cost more than the heads are worth to have them rebuilt. So even though they're aluminum heads, it really doesn't mean a lot if you don't know the condition of it. So just trying to get a feel for him, where he's at. I told him, I was like, if I show up and I can turn the motor over by hand, I'd probably be willing to give like 500 bucks. He said that sounds good. So, okay, so I'm loaded up now and heading out there. He's been working on his Bobcat today, and should have it. He should be just wrapping up replacing a tire on it right now. So I'm headed out there. That's an hour away. So let's see how it goes. I haven't seen it in person other than just peeking through a couple of layers of top, and just saw it as a small block Chevy from the vertical up top. Saw there was no carburetor. So let's see what we run into. Oh, we made a deal on it. I'll go over it in a minute, but he's hooking me up by putting it in with the Bobcat. Just got it fixed just in time. He had to put a tire on it and some other stuff. Gotta work on getting this loaded. We made it back, but my friend wants to go to the movies, and it starts in like 40 minutes. So I gotta go online, see if I can get tickets, and get going. We will touch base on how this went tomorrow. The trip went fine. We got a lot to unpack on this thing. A couple of curveballs when I showed up, but that's okay. We worked around with it, and we'll cover it tomorrow. Be right back. All right. So this motor. Wasn't looking for a motor, and I bought another motor. It's funny how those things work out. It's funny how things line up, and just being nice to people and just chatting with people and stuff sometimes will land you in a decent situation. So those Vector wheels, those turbine style wheels I just picked up at a good deal. Guy was super nice. I showed up. They were better than I expected, so just gave him what he asked. And while I was there, he seemed like he was cleaning house, so I asked him if he had anything else laying around. And he mentioned some 20-inch tires. I really didn't have any interest in 20-inch tires, so I just told him, I was like, no, old stuff like these kind of wheels, or stuff for like muscle cars or anything like that. And then he mentioned that he had a muscle motor sitting around. So I said, okay, well, what is it? He thought it was a big block. It was underneath like a fiberglass tonneau cover and like an extended cap looking thing, and then wrapped up in tops. So he pulled some stuff back. I was able to pull the top back just enough to see that it was a small block Chevy. I was only able to see straight down. So he didn't know for sure if he was going to sell it, and he wasn't sure of a price on it. So I just told him, I said, when you get a chance, just put a price on it if you're going to sell it, and let me know. Didn't hear anything for a couple of days, so I just sent a reminder message just asking if he had come up with a price or anything. And he asked me to make him an offer on it. And he had said that it was a new motor, that it had only been run on the stand here, and that it was a new motor. And all as I know is when I saw it, it was sitting outside under a top, and it had no carburetor on it and no rags or nothing in the holes where the carburetor went. So that's a little bothersome in itself. And then I just told him, I said, not knowing anything about the motor, he had sent me a couple of pictures at that point, and in the pictures you could tell it was on this like homemade engine run stand thing. I mean, it's big, it's bulky, it's extra heavy duty. I don't know if I'll keep it around, but it's kind of bulky to hang around, unless if I have a spare motor sitting on it maybe, which probably always will anyway. But anyway, I saw it was on that, and then in the pictures I was able to see that it had some sort of aluminum heads. So I just told him, I said, if I can turn the motor over by hand, I'd probably be willing to take a gamble on it at $500, because he didn't know anything about the motor other than the people that had it before supposedly ran it on this stand from time to time. So, okay. So I told him I'd take a gamble at $500 if I could turn it over by hand. Basically because the carburetor wasn't on it, and I was very skeptical that no water got into it. So I get there, and sure enough, I cannot turn it over by hand. Grabbing the balancer, I couldn't turn it over by hand. There was a couple of like tire irons and a flat bar and stuff. So I put one in each hole here, put one across them, and everything in me, I couldn't get it to budge at all. The Humrock balance is slipping on the crank, but it wouldn't budge the crank either way. So at that point, he was still working on his Bobcat. So I started looking it over, and I said, you know what, let me try and pull out a couple of spark plugs. And I was able to get 2 spark plugs off with the headers on. As soon as I pulled the spark plugs out, water poured out of the cylinders. So the cylinders were full of water. At that point, I mean, they are Edelbrock Performer RPM heads, so they got some sort of value, but they're aluminum. So if there was a lot of water in there and they started corroding in the ports, that's not very ideal. And if like they started rusting the valves, then you're talking about a valve job. And if you're looking at a full valve job, I mean, nowadays you could be talking $800 or something. So I wasn't really excited about the motor at that point. I told him maybe a couple $100. He told me $300. I really wasn't comfortable with that, but I was more comfortable with like $200, because if the heads are all corroded, the valves are rusted, and the cylinders are rusted, which I know the cylinders are rusted at least, then really what are you buying? An intake manifold and a set of heads that need to be redone and having valve work done. Honestly, you're better off just buying a set of heads now. But then I thought about it, and in my head I said, well, I got a smoking deal on the wheels and tires, so I paid $180 for the wheels and tires. $280 I probably still would have bought them. So in my head, I told him, I was like, okay, so in my head I'm going to give you $200 for the motor, I'll give you extra $100 for the wheels, basically. So I gave him the $300 for the motor, but in my mind I'm only justifying $200 of it on there, and I'll tell myself I paid more for the wheels. I'm just playing a little head game to kind of get things okay. But I'm going to work on getting this thing out, and we'll go over it a little bit. I want to pull the headers off, I want to pull the spark plugs off, and I want to go over getting some sort of lube in there. I did stop and buy a bunch of PB Blaster and stuff, maybe even pull the intake manifold and look down the intake ports and such where it was off. I mean, there could be a nut, a bolt, anything down in there, or see how much corrosion there is on the valves, and so on. And I do have a fluoroscope that I tried getting into the cylinders, but those 2 cylinders I really couldn't see much on at the place, so maybe when I get the others out I can go through them. So let's work on getting this thing unpacked, and then we'll go over it. Alright, so if you listen to the long-winded intro to this, you would have heard that I was able to get 2 spark plugs out yesterday and water came pouring out. So now the headers just came out of the way, and let's see if it's going to happen to any other cylinders. Nope, not that one. Maybe it'll be anticlimactic. Well, that's okay, we still got 2 or 3 more on the other side. No, not those. But these are the plugs that I pulled out yesterday. Yeah, see these ones here, those ones there, they're not too corroded. This one here has definitely got some aluminum corrosion going on it. But these are the ones that I pulled out yesterday. You can clearly see, and wow, they didn't have much of a gap on there. That one there is actually closed. So yeah, those two, you can see that one right there. You can see rust coming out of the hole. That one poured water out yesterday. Let's check the other 3 real quick while we got you on regular video here. Only 2 on this side. But you can still see the rust that ran out there and there. And this one, I won't disturb that, but that'll show some of the corrosion in the cylinder. Let's see here. Oh, no water there. But I hit the jackpot. Somebody was just saying, hey, he can only get these 2. Let's make sure he knows there's water in there. Oh, that one's nasty. Yeah, this one, it's not too bad. I can get it to zoom in on that. Come on. Yeah, that one's a little nasty. Look at how crooked that electrode is. But this is the other one. Look at all that junk on there. This is not looking hopeful, guys. Alright, let's pop you off the stand, give you a look inside the cylinders. I mean, in the ports. Let's see if I can turn the light on. Yeah, so you can see there's all condensation in there. Couple of drips in there. Some rust on that stem. And then this one here, you can see all that corrosion on that one. So that one's definitely hurting for certain. And let's see what the other side looks like. What are those lines on the right hand side? See those lines down on the right hand side? I wonder what those are all about. Yeah, see, they're over there too. I don't know what those lines are all about. Yeah, this back one on this side definitely had some water go by it there. But then, if you look inside the cylinder head, you can tell, like, this was a fresh top end. You know, the valve springs are clean and all that. But then water got in. Excuse me, sorry. And then the valve covers weren't barely bolted on, so you can see a bunch of trash and debris came in. And then even more on this side. Yeah, so that's not good. And I don't know what that stamping is there. Is that a backwards 7.7 or something? Can't say I've seen those before, but what I did notice on the other side, those are just roller tip rockers, so they're on the cheaper side.
But you come across to this guy. Look at that one's fractured. It's all cracked open. Like the valve was adjusted too tight or something. It does seem like it's a substantially high lift cam. See how high that one is? How low that one is being opened? Does seem like it's a pretty decent lift. And all the ones that were loose, I couldn't push the back side of them down. So I think it's a solid cam. Yeah, so things ain't looking good. I didn't really want to waste time messing with this thing. I do got to get back on the house. This was just the initial thought was I was going to pick this up. I was going to be able to turn it over. It was going to be a spare motor to put in the back burner area and whatnot. But as of right now, I have to. I can't just put it away because all this water in there, it's just going to make it rot even more. So realistically, I should try and get it freed up to push the water up and out of the cylinders and bury this thing in lube, or take the heads right off of it so I can just swab up the water and just keep burying it, which is probably more than likely the best thing to do, because even at glancing at this thing right now, whoever put this all together, usually when you put aluminum heads on, you put on aftermarket bolts with the washers, and these ones don't have the washers. But also what I'm realizing now is, if you look, like that head bolt down in there has a TP or TR on it, TR, and then that one has something different. Yeah, see, some of them have the 6 points on them. That one's got the TR, and then that's one style, just regular round, and then there's other ones without the dimple in the middle of them. So they're all mismatched hardware on the heads themselves. Yeah, same thing over here. These ones have more of this like weird symbol, and then some other stuff. Yeah, and then some TRs. Yeah, so I'm gonna see if I have an Allen wrench where I can pop the intake off, look down the intake ports, and then at that point maybe I'll see if I can get a better bar on it and spray a bunch of lube down the cylinders. I gotta at least get this to either turn over and spit the water out, or pull the heads right off. All right, let's see what I'm doing. Let's get this intake off. So this is another one of those things where nothing against you, brother, that sold it to me, but he kept saying it's brand new. He kept saying it's brand new, and I get it. At one point it was a very good motor at one point. Water destroys everything, and this is exactly why I probably should have just not bought it. But I'm a gambling man with stuff like this. I'm not a scratch ticket person or anything like that. Like, I don't gamble except on pots. Once in a while it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. This is one of those cases where it probably won't, because every step I go deeper it gets worse and worse, because I had popped the distributor out when I was there and peeked inside and it looked pretty clean, but apparently this was nose down where it was sitting, and all the water went to the front. So looking down the distributor hole, that's all I was able to see, you know, because you're looking down this hole right here. So that looked pretty clean. I could see it wasn't very clean way down, but now if you look further forward away from everything, see that's where all the water pooled and just filled up and rusted out the lifters.
You know, there's rust in the bores, probably freezing those lifters there. And then if you look inside there, you can even see right there, that's a made in USA timing chain, but that's not even a double roller timing chain. But that's not good. The corrosion in the ports is not good. You can see the corrosion all down in there. Oh, you can see that one's fully pooled with water right now. And it's all that funky, milky aluminum corrosion in there. There you go. You can't even see the valve. So guarantee you that valve's bad. Yeah, you can see that one's like totally rusted down in there. That one's open. Yeah, so that's the one that was full of water that poured out the other day. Yeah, and you can see that one's filled up with water still on the back side of the valve, all corroded. So this motor's probably going to be spare parts. I think at this point I'm just going to zap the heads off and wipe the water out, spray it down with a bunch of stuff, and maybe pull the drain plug, and that's about all I can invest the time right now. But the description, like I said, and again, brother, if you're watching this isn't to bash you at all. This is just how it goes. I've been buying used parts my whole life, and I'm 50 years old now, and this is how it goes. Just water kills everything, and not stored right. Like the valve covers, the bolts were just barely caught, so they had like 3/4 of an inch. Like this is how one of the gaskets was, just hanging out the outside. That's an intrusion point, as you can see by all the dirt and debris and crustiness that's in there and the rust. So water went in that way. There was no carb on it. You can see inside. You can see inside the intake, all that corrosion right there. That's all from water going in there because there was no carburetor on it. And then the intake ports on the intake are corroded. It's usable, you know, you just media blast this thing and you could reuse that, but like all that crustiness down in there and whatnot, and what I'm seeing inside the back of those valves. Yeah, so before the heads come off, there's one broken rocker arm, which I'm not even sure what brand this is. So it's probably some knockoff brand. So you might not even be able to get one replacement to match. So you're looking at a set of rockers most likely. You're looking at probably a full head job on it, redoing the valves and cleaning up the seats and all that type of stuff and whatnot. And the motor is stuck. There's all crustiness in the lifters, so the lifters are probably bad. If they were running this thing on a stand, then there's a good chance that they might have messed up the cam by not doing a proper break-in procedure. So yeah, at this point it looks like there was a good set of heads bolted on this thing and probably a new cam and whatnot. But if you break it all down, at very least is I have possibly a spare electric fan if that's not ruined from being in the rain. But this is the conventional GM aluminum bell housing for like second gen Camaro and kind of everything else. And it does have a standard flywheel in there. It's all rusty, but that could be machined. And a spare just regular Edelbrock Performer, not even the Performer RPM intake, dual plane, and some heads that with some work will be reusable.
and don't know if the block will be savable yet. And some chrome, huge long cherry bombs. Sorry, I stroked it there for a second. Ignore that. All right, let's pop these heads off and let's see how bad these cylinders are. Let's get this over with. All right, let's pop this off, see what it looks like. And like I was saying, people use special bolts with washers. There's one bolt in here with a conventional lock washer on it. You should not have a lock washer on a head bolt, and that was only one of them. So it's not like they put it on all of them thinking that's what they were doing, because if the threads don't seal on these, they go into a coolant passage. So the head has to seal also as a secondary failure point. If you got a split washer, coolant will come by the threads possibly and go through there. But either way, you should not have a split washer on something like this that you're torquing to specs on an aluminum head. So that just goes to show the quality of work that was being done. Oh yeah, what'd I tell you? What'd I tell you? That thing was not gonna run. Yeah, people like to think they know everything. And the guy said the block's good. I assure you the block's good. Again, I'm not busting your chops. This is just the facts of life. This is, you can't know what's inside a motor. Visually, you can't know what's inside the motor. And this one here is a perfect scenario of, this is not a new motor. This is a junk motor. 100%. And it's not rust. Let's see the rust. See how much water is sitting in there? Look at that cylinder wall over there. That cylinder wall is busted wide open. So this thing's probably locked up because that rod's probably broken. I bet you that rod went through the side of that block, because if that was frozen, that would have came in the other way, unless if this was full from the inside here and froze outwards, which is possible, but no, that's definitely a hit down in there. You can see an impact right there where I just wiped it off. So that's probably the side of the wrist pin, probably hit that wall. But that is absolutely junk. So at that point, what is it? Maybe a crankshaft? After all this water going in there, filling up the block and everything else? I doubt even that's savable. And you can see the bottom of the head now. Sorry, mega zoom right now. You can see they all had water in them. They all started having corrosion. That's the water that came out of that front cylinder. And now, let's get the rest of it out. Yeah, see, there's still more water coming out of those cylinders. And that's how much stuff was in that cylinder with it. But that's junk. So this is why it's a gamble. It's always a gamble. So basically I spent 300 bucks on a bell housing, possibly some savable heads, an intake that in my opinion is worth maybe 50 bucks. That's what you can buy them for at the swap meet. And a set of headers that might be, those might be an S10 swap header, and basically a solid engine run stand if I want to keep it. So it's not a total loss, but it is just
It is what it is. I mean, it's 30 over. And honestly, I don't even know if this is... I'd have to measure the bore or run the numbers on the pistons to see if it's actually a 350 or a 305. Could be a 305 high output for all I know. But I think it's a 350. I think the 305 has a wider spacing between the cylinders. But if you look, that gasket should have been closer to the edge. So who knows what this gasket is for. If it's for 30 over or 60 over or who knows what. But it's junk. Alright, let's pull the other head off. Just for craps and giggles. Alright, pull head number 2 off. And again, same thing with this one. Where'd it go? Threw it in here with the rest. Again, another one with a lock washer down in this same spot. My guess is that machined area around the bolt wouldn't let them get a socket on it to torque it enough, so they had to space it up, which most of these, like ARP bolts, they'll have a 1/2 inch head, not a 5/8, so it tapers down really small, and then it'll have a nice clean smooth washer under it. Yep. Oh, poured it right on my sneaker. That's one of my good sneakers too. Yeah, so a bunch just dumped out of the head. Let's see how much more wants to come out. You guys can see that? Yeah, more out of it. You can see all the corrosion on these ones. That one's hanging up a little bit. Shame. Was a nice set of heads. And yeah, as figured, this side of the block is trash also. Not that it matters once the other side's trashed, but let's take a look around. That one's weird. It's like black inside on the bore. It's weird. There's a part number on the piston I can run later, or you guys can run. 2244P 0.030, so it's 30 over whatever that piston is. But she's nasty. I mean, you might have got this one to run. You might have got this one to run. But another thing I wanted to touch on, because I was kind of hoping to be able to get this motor running to kind of educate people a little bit on getting crusty motors running, because people want to soak the cylinders through the spark plug hole. And if you want to soak a cylinder about rust on the cylinders that's free, that has the rings stuck to the cylinders, if you fill it up to the spark plug hole, you're not coating the whole cylinder. You have to get in there with a spray and aim it up to the far side. And even at that, soaking isn't going to do a lot, but you have to get something that's going to cling to the walls and spray it up and in. Let me show you. So let me just put a glove on here real quick. Bear with me. Sorry you're looking at my kneecap at the moment. But yeah, so the spark plug hole is way down near the edge of the cylinder. So the spark plug hole is probably about there. And if I rest this in, that's about level. So if you fill this cylinder with fluid, even down at this depth, you're not coating that wall. So if you're pouring something in with a straw or a funnel and a hose or anything like that, you're only going to get the bottom. Now I know that's where the water's going to rest, and you think that's where the worst problem is, but sometimes the worst problem is up. Look at the scale up there. Is far higher than you can get that to fill. So all of this is also corroded, because as these things acclimate, hot cold cycle, this condensates, comes up here and sticks to the walls. And then as it dries off, it starts rusting. And then as the temperature changes again, it'll condensate again and stick to the walls. That's how like valves get stuck. They're up higher, but things are like condensating and coming up. So if you picture this one here, this piston's down pretty far, and I would say that right there, that is pretty much level. Now look at, if you can only fill it to here, you're not covering the rings all the way. You're not covering all of these walls. So if you get in there with a spray and aim it up and get it to blast and spatter against the wall and spray all over the place, because it's going to hit and spray and everything, it's going to be better. Because like even this is full of water right now. And this was full of water up to here because the spark plug was in it. And even at that, it was coming out the exhaust port into the header at that point. On this one, I'm guessing. But even at this, with it up this high, that's the only amount of fluid you can get in if you're pouring it in. So again, you got to get a straw in, and you got to blast it up and around. Some sort of spray like WD-40 PB Blaster, something with a straw on it with good pressure. Huh, look at that. People talk about using too much silicone on things. That's supposed to be a coolant bleed hole. And if you look, a piece of silicone from something else, probably the thermostat or the water pump, look at that, came up, flowed through, and plugged that hole from the backside. You just saw that. Excess silicone is never good. It'll get into oil pickup screens and into passages like this. So never do that. But yeah, so if you're trying to free up an old motor, you have to spray up and around, and multiple times. Like, you're gonna spray it, it's gonna run off there, spray it again. Like, do it a couple days in a row and just keep doing that. I mean, outside of that, if you can make sure the valves are open, like if it's a small block Chevy, if you can tighten all the intake valves more and back off all the exhaust valves, then you could essentially pour quarts of oil or whatever you want to use, brake fluid, acetone, whatever mix you want to use, you could pour right down the intake, and essentially then you could fill that whole motor all the way up. So if you ever wanted to like kind of guarantee a motor is going to sit around, take the exhaust rockers right off, tighten all the intake ones just until they open, so you know a little flow will happen, and then fill it up through the intake ports until it fills the whole intake. Then you know the whole engine is sealed and it can never corrode. And then at that point, you're gonna have to go on the back side of the exhaust valves, through the exhaust ports out the sides, coat them with something heavy, and tape over them and fill those holes. But moisture is not your friend. And again, this isn't a rip on the guy that sold this to me. He's a positive thinker, and that's a good way to go through life most of the time. That it was a brand new motor, and it was a brand new motor, and it is a brand new motor, but it is a junk motor that has almost no miles on it. So anyway, just know what you're getting into, and know that these stuck motors can be a million times worse than you expect. Everybody thinks a stuck motor is just going to be free up, get the rings free and get the thing turning over and get lube in there, and you're going to fire it up. This thing is not going to fire with that cylinder over there. And if you look at this, that is the second one back. Yeah, so that one's the second one back. Let's just get another fresh look in there. See that gapless monstrous right there? That is no good. But anyway,
she would never fire. So anytime you're buying something like this, try and buy it right or walk away. Like if you can't buy it right, walk away. If he stuck to 500 bucks, I would have walked away. I was going to walk away at the $300. Kind of went against my better judgment, but it is what it is. And we'll go over a list of the stuff that we did get as a positive. As a positive, engine run stand, aluminum heads that should be able to be cleaned up or rebuilt, aluminum bell housing, which it'll either stay with this or I can use it on other stuff if I need, possibly an electric fan, a small radiator to use in something. And this thing is like mega universal. Look at all those holes in the side of that thing. But then the rest of the motor, it's got a really nice ground cable. That's a positive. And then these headers, I believe these headers are probably, let's see if we can back this up a little bit. There we go. Yeah, I bet you these might be S10 swap headers, maybe. They're pace setter headers with a part number in there of 701318, somewhere in there. I can't get it to focus on there. But then even you go as far as being like, oh, look at that, that's a nice HEI distributor. But it was left out in the open, out in the weather. And it's all corroded down inside in the pickup and everything. So even that, probably no good. But that's it. We'll call this one buyer beware. And I'm still okay. It's 300 bucks ain't gonna break me, and I'll get 300 bucks worth out of everything else. It's just not a good spare motor to be able to throw together a re-ring and put in something else. It's some spare parts. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You just gotta stay positive about it and not let it burn you totally. But always remember, stuff like this is the reality of when somebody says it's a brand new motor. This is what can happen. And unfortunately nowadays it happens more often than not. But anyway, that'll conclude it for this one. I'm not even gonna bother swapping that water out. I'm just gonna pack everything up and push it in. There's no need to swap the water out because that block piston's a junk anyway. So that's it. We're calling it at that point. So anyway, thanks again for stopping in. You guys are awesome. I'll do what I can about getting you guys some more content. I was hoping this one I'd be able to get it up and running, like get it freed, get it running, fire it up on the stand for you guys and all that stuff, but that is not gonna happen. So anyway, let you guys get back to it, and I'm gonna get back to it. We got other work to do on the house. That's a priority. Let's get back to it. One final note I'll stick in there at the end for the people that stuck through to the end. Along the lines of like when something's not built right and the wrong people have their hands on it and stuff like that, it causes multiple little issues. And like one of those little issues that's really not that big of an issue, but head torque is critical on things, and where they use the wrong bolts on an aluminum head. Come on, let's get in there. Yeah, you can see some of them are all galled up, and it's got a groove cut in it where like a washer would have sat and spread across it nice and even. Yeah, so now like realistically you'd want to set up something like a little cookie with a small disc on it and just go in there and touch them up just to smooth them over, just in case, because if the washer, if that cut in area, if when you put the right bolt in, the washer is like just catching on the outer edge of it, then over time it may kind of crush that aluminum and cause the head to relax a little bit and cause you to have a head gasket failure later. But either way, it is what it is, and we'll keep going. Oh, and the part number on the heads. Let's give you guys the part number on the head.
Edelbrock Performer RPM 6089. Oh, we'll give you the block number too. What is that? A 149. Yeah, I think 149-10207. And then the numbers on the front. Where are they? Get out of here, push rods. V1128AK. That is. Come on, focus. Sorry, guys. One AS408233. What's that supposed to be? Part of the VIN number, maybe? But V1128AK. Anyway, again, thanks for stopping in and watching and checking in, and hopefully we'll have some better content for you guys soon. I know I already said it, but in case somebody fast forwards and just catches the end, that's where I'll do it again. And again, if any of you guys can share this, subscribe if you're not subscribing, whatever, it'll help the channel grow and help me out where I can justify making more content if I'm getting more views and more subscribers and all that stuff. But help push me along to make me think it's worth it more, and keep doing it and do it more and all that stuff. Like, we always like to meet goals and see progressions of things getting better and stuff like that. So anyway, hopefully the channel can grow. That way I can keep going and keep getting you guys even more content. And in the meantime, thank you everyone for this that's here, and everybody that's coming along that sees this video in the future. You guys are all awesome.